Greetings on this fine Lord's Day of Rest. Today I'm taking a rest day from my dextrogen, as if I take dextrogen, which, is kind of an imperative for me. Like my ADD is, it's so bad that I was misdiagnosed with autism as a teenager. It didn't take long for me to overturn that, but actually, no, it's kind of strange because I found out that some paperwork sent out from my physician's office does list me as autistic, even though the guy who, I believe he was a neuropsychologist who was examining me, and he was, doing the whole triage, and he gave me a sheet of paper to fill out. Actually, the sheet of paper preceded the actual mono examination, but the sheet of paper was mostly just questions that I found to be relevant to someone who had depression. So I took pretty high on the it was a 1 to 10 scale for each question, and so that paper alone was they were like, oh well, he's autistic, and so I was like, oh fuck, now I gotta talk to this guy and tell him I'm not, and demonstrate to him that I'm not. It was quite a, well, this is gonna sound dirty. It is a hairy pickle to be in. I don't care if it sounds dirty. There's a hairy pickle to be in, that's for sure. And today on my day of rest, I am feeding the crows. Because you know what? Crows are fucking homies. I like them. I like crows. I used to feed them all the time at my old house. And they're wicked smart, man. But before I go off on crows, the whole autism misdiagnosis thing, the first time I met with the guy, I was super anxious about coming across as autistic, so I was kind of stammering over my words and stuff when I talked to him. And so that reinforced his belief that I did have it. But then I calmed myself down the next few times I saw him, and he was like, yeah, no, I can tell you're actually just angsty that one time, and you just have really bad ADD, and you're not actually autistic. Sorry about that. I guess someone didn't get that memo because, for some reason, the thing is, it seems like every time my medical file is sent to someone, it means something completely different than what it said, a week before that. And that's those are some kind of shocking inconsistencies. Those are the kind of inconsistencies that can really fuck up someone's life. If I got hit by a car tomorrow and, there was a inconsistency in, the benzos, and people weren't giving me benzos while I'm in a coma, I would probably die. Needless to say, I think Canadian healthcare is overrated. It's mostly free, but you do pay for it in your own ways because, they give you, the lowest standards of service possible, essentially. Mileage may vary, of course. Some people may have good experiences, but for the most part, I've heard nothing but, almost regressive experiences that people have had. But, anyways, I, because of my extreme ADD and, going to school because I want to be, an academic someday, which has been very hard, with the benzotaper and everything else, all my other conditions. I know, woe is me, right? I mean, no, I'm actually pretty proud of myself for doing so well, despite, you know, going through, like, a waking fucking nightmare constantly. I'm proud of myself for that, so, yeah, don't feel too sorry for me. And, you know, it's also something I kind of brought on myself. As for the, you know, the depression, the central nervous system disorders, those things I would wager, the depression I was born with, central nervous system disorders, I think I may have been born with, but I think it was heavily exacerbated by being on, oh, there's a crow, what's up, crows? What's up, buddies? Glad to see you. Yeah, I'm gonna take a few steps back. So the thing is with crows, they're very leery. They're smart. They won't just come up to you immediately. Some will maybe, depending on where you live, but usually they're pretty. Fuck, my mouth is dry as fuck. God damn. Usually they're pretty cagey. And it takes a while to get them to warm up, but yeah, there they go. Fucking hell. But yeah, like I take dexedrine, which is it's DOG amphetamine. Like when people say amphetamine, that's what they're referring to. Yes, there are other kinds out there, but and in some people actually, dextroamphetamine is converted by their liver into methamphetamine, believe it or not. Even crazier, methamphetamine is actually prescribed in tablet form for children who have very severe ADD. It's called Soxin. Look it up. Like, I'm not even joking, but it's very like small doses. It's like 5-10 milligrams. Yeah, look at the crows there. Yeah. They're having a nice Sunday brunch. That's good. I'm always happy to hang with the murder party. You know, murder crows, whatever. Yeah, the thing though is, like, when you have very, very extreme ADD, stimulants have an antithetical effect. They actually sedate you. They sort of bring the frenetic pace at which your thoughts may be traveling down and allow them to become a little more composed and efficient. But the thing is, like I take a very high dose of dexedrine. I take pretty much like the highest dose you can be prescribed, which is 40 milligrams a day, and I get instant release tablets. So it's not like Adderall or anything. It's like, hits you right away. It's funny because like my addiction doctor prescribes me these, and they're like the most abusable form of dextroamphetamine. So they're just pure dextroamphetamine in like little tablets. If you really wanted to, you could smash them up and snort them, but for one, I think that's kind of stupid. For two, you just shouldn't be snorting pills. It's just that's just not a good thing. It's not something I would endorse. I've done my fair share with Oxycontin and stuff back in the day, but I have nothing but regrets for doing that. But I remember kids who would like grind up their fucking like Ritalin or their Adderall in class and fucking snort it. Like, and it's actually a waste to do that because the bioavailability of those things is better if you take them orally anyways. And also you're not caking your nose with a bunch of fucking shit that's pressed into a pill. But I got a bit more spunk today though than I usually would on a rest day, because usually on rest days, because I have to take at least 1 or 2 out of every week, or my tolerance develops and it just stops working. And for those of you who don't know, stimulants are actually not physically addictive. Believe it or not. Like these, not physically addictive. Nicotine, yes, it's a stimulant. But even stuff like crack cocaine, methamphetamine, not physically addictive. You'll get a pretty fucking awful hangover from it, but that's more of a rebound than physical withdrawal. If you're experiencing physical withdrawal from these things, then it's probably because they're putting fentanyl in them, and people just shouldn't be doing meth to begin with. I think it was Australia that had a very bad meth problem. Like, they called it ice. Like, it was very fucking big. I've heard that term used here, but the quality of methamphetamine, which is, it's kind of that in itself is kind of an oxymoron, quality and methamphetamine. Because unless you're taking like fucking those tablets that are produced by a pharmaceutical company, like I said, or you're taking like Pervitin in a World War II, like, you're not taking pure methamphetamine, you're taking a fuckload of chemicals, like, essentially, from stuff that you'd find under a kitchen sink. But they're not physically addictive. Cocaine's not physically addictive. It's just there's a very heavy psychological component to it that makes redosing very appealing to a lot of people who get those stimulant properties. Now, despite me taking like a high dose of dextrin, it doesn't really speed me up all that much. I find after I take my rest day or 2, that I will notice that I'm a little more amped up than usual. But that's probably because it's such a high dose. Cocaine, like, I've done a lot. Trust me, I've done my fair share of cocaine. I used to sell it in fucking high school. And it was very, very fucking high quality cocaine. I provided it for this guy who would bring it to celebrities and who were performing at this arena in our city, and he said it was like A++++++++++. He was a very weird guy. He lived in this really nice house, and he had like fucking stuffed animals wall to wall, and he was like very introverted and awkward, but somehow he was like the fucking hook up to the stars. Yeah, that was ages ago though. But I mean, even that stuff, like, I can, like, and I have. I mean, in the past I used to do a lot of cocaine because I used to drink very heavily, especially when I was, homeless, or when I was selling it and I just had more money than I knew what to do with. I'd put away sometimes a 24 pack of like fucking like 8% alcohol, fucking like shitty beer, fucking or fifth of bourbon or scotch, and I'd always have like at least a gram of cocaine to keep me from blacking out. Didn't always work, but I still did tons nonetheless. But cocaine, just like, it doesn't make me like okay, so here's your typical response from someone on cocaine. Oh, dude, fucking, I'm like so fucking blessed, and I've got so many ideas, and I'm gonna start my own business, and I'm gonna like verging on mania type of just empty rhetoric, empty fucking statements about their aspirations and what they're gonna do, and that they're going to do it as soon as possible, and then the next day rolls around and they're essentially either just looking to do more cocaine or they're like all paranoid and like, coming down and crashing and irritable, and it's safe to say they're not going to be doing very much. Such though is the effect of taking dexedrine as much as I do, that I find myself very lethargic on my rest days. And so what I've been doing is taking modafinil on my rest days, and modafinil's quite interesting. This is only the third time I've done it, and this is the highest dose I've done so far. I've done it twice in the past, 100 milligrams each time, and today I did 200 because it said you're supposed to start with 200. Now, modafinil is quite interesting, and I think it should be prescribed for stuff like ADD, because it's very hard to categorize as a drug, because it does combat fatigue, and it does make you feel slightly more awake, but like definitely nowhere near like the strength of 40 milligrams of fucking dexedrine. And it's a very, so what is modafinil? Modafinil I remember when it came out, it was called a nootropic. This was the first actual nootropic, because that's a term or a category of drugs that has actually been quite mythical. Mythical in that people have said this, that, and the other. Like what was it that Joe Rogan used to fucking shill on his podcast all the time, on it or whatever, the fucking 5-HTP pills and shit like that. And by the way, 5-HTP, just like melatonin or valerian root, is something that your body just kind of metabolizes when you take it orally. So whether you get anything out of it is kind of based on your metabolism. But what a nootropic means is something that actually enhances your cognitive function, improves your ability, or your brain's ability to function on a higher level. And so naturally, you could see why people would exploit the hell out of that classification, because everyone wants their brain to be like that fucking stupid I'm sorry, I think it's a stupid movie, but Limitless, where the guy takes a pill and he goes from being like a dorky nobody to like a fucking cool, confident, smart, rich guy. That's kind of how a lot of these quote-unquote nootropics are sold. As if, it's gonna make that kind of vast transformation in your character and your just overall functionability, the efficacy of your decision making, and your confidence levels, and this, that, and the other. But modafinil, I believe, works on the brain in a way that's relatively similar to microdoses. I've come to find that it's actually very common for ER doctors or surgeons, ER surgeons specifically, will write themselves scripts for modafinil, because A, they won't test positive for amphetamines, B, they won't have jitters, even I, with my ADD and the antithetical effect of uppers, I still get, I already have shaky hands, but taking dextroamphetamine does make me jitter even more. Not all that much more, but like it is noticeable. But like my hands are pretty steady compared to usual. So I can see why there's are exit to themselves. And it's very odd because like somehow my buddy got a prescription, but my buddy's like he is fucking like made on money, that dude, fucking, and all on his own, like I have mad respect for that. But he gets it prescribed, so he probably paid off a doctor, I imagine, because I think there still are a lot of what William Burroughs would deem croakers, people who essentially you give them money, they give you a script for whatever you want. Actually, if you haven't heard the story behind how the strain of mushrooms, the penis envies, came to be, look it up. It's fucking fascinating. And it involves, some criminal activity to fund its production that centers around a doctor doing just that. I won't go any further because I want to keep this video somewhat on track. B, I think it's a fascinating story and you should look it up yourself. It involves Terrence McKenna, like he was the one who got the original spore print, or I think not spore print, but actual spore specimen for them, and they were sort of like they were cultivated again and again and again until they got like the perfect ones. And like mushrooms, honestly, they're kind of the potency, or at least the massive leap in potency compared to what they were 10 years ago is fucking insane. It's I'd say just about on par with like hydroponic weed compared to weed from like the 70s and 80s. But so modafinil, it apparently lights up your hypothalamus, which is what is your hypothalamus essentially is crucial for neurotransmission. It's where a lot of your neurotransmission will happen, and it will sort of dictate the speeds at which neurotransmission happens. And proteins are carried to neurons and synapses, and I may be getting some of this wrong, but I'm not a neuroscientist, so and I'm not claiming to be one. So if you're asking me to fucking pull out citations off the top of my head, it's not gonna fucking happen. But I've looked into this before, like quite a bit, so I'm pretty sure what I'm saying is true, but I could be wrong. I always could be wrong. It's always important to reserve the idea that, hey, maybe we could be wrong about this or that. It's kind of crucial in the whole learning process. But it's so modafinil is at this time only prescribed to people who have narcolepsy. And for those of you who don't know, narcolepsy is essentially a disorder that causes you to fall asleep spontaneously. It's actually so bad for people that have it. They actually prescribe pharmaceutical grade GHB to these people. Like, I'm not even fucking kidding. They'll send them enough, because this is something a lot of people don't know about GHB. It actually it increases deep wave sleep. I remember I used to take it all the time when I couldn't sleep at all to fucking knock myself out, and I'd wake up 4 hours later feeling like I slept for 8, and I had the wildest fucking dreams, and then I would take more and go back to sleep, and I felt super duper rested. But You know, I'm also, I'm going to caution you right now that fucking GHB is, it's an easy drug to abuse. It's euphoric. It's like alcohol. If you mix it with alcohol, it can kill you, but it is actually a very natural chemical. It's in the human body. It's actually what makes you sleepy when you eat too much turkey or fish. Like people have always said that's tryptophan, but that's actually a myth. It's GHB, because there's high levels of GHB in turkey and fish. Like the doses I was taking was nothing compared to what they would prescribe people who have narcolepsy. Because the thing is, when you're falling asleep constantly during the day, how the fuck are you supposed to sleep through the night? Like, I'm someone who has very bad insomnia and has to practice sleep hygiene. Like, I no joke, have not taken a nap in years. Like, it is almost like borderline impossible for me to do so. And even if I wanted to, it would be a bad idea, because I probably won't sleep that night, even if I just nap for like 20 minutes. Like, so no siestas for me. Whatever. Yeah, so, like, the reason GHB is considered a date rape drug is because it's considered a date rape drug because you can essentially knock yourself out with it, or you can knock someone else out, depending on how it's used. One could say I date rape myself when I accidentally took too much from G-hold, and yeah, that was actually kind of scary. I'm not gonna lie, I think I told the story on my channel before. I'm pretty sure I told this story, but it wasn't neat and interesting like a K-hole. It was like fucking like 3 hours of like sleep paralysis. Yeah, freaky deaky stuff. There were hallucinations that were very bizarre. Like, I was like a quadriplegic with Down syndrome, like like really strange stuff, and that kind of turned me off doing it for a long time. I haven't been able to do it because of the benzotaper. I honestly think it's like a better drug than alcohol, but it's definitely something you got to be careful with. You got to know your sources. Like, I had a friend who, unfortunately, someone gave them GBL, I think, and it was like really, like, GBL apparently is like, it can be very corrosive. It's like it's one of the drugs you use. I think what happens is they convert it into GHB. But GBL is like apparently like super corrosive, like paint thinner. Yeah. So my friend took it. She decided to be a guinea pig, and she's a really fucking great person, like, she's a former addict. I remember when I met her, we were like doing fucking meth together and shit, because we were both like starting our spiral into addiction as teenagers. She went in the direction of meth. I didn't really like meth, so I went in the direction of cocaine and heroin. Intermittent alcohol, cocaine, benzodiazepine abuse over the years, until I finally like wised up and was like, this is fucking terrible for me, and heroin isn't even a thing anymore. So I stopped doing it. I'm glad I did, but I still would do GHB, and like, it was a nice combination to mix with like cocaine or alcohol, like, it's not like I'm gonna stop doing cocaine for the rest of my life. I ethically, I hate it, because it's, since it's a limited resource, it's one that's worth a lot of money, it's worth its weight in gold. Actually, I think it's worth more than gold, and it's super destructive to the communities that just are unfortunate enough to have it growing in their backyard, essentially. It's not great. Plus, it's hell expensive. But the thing is, like, if I had access to, like, methadone or something like that, I would have done that instead. The only time I do cocaine now is if someone offered it to me. I wouldn't pay for that shit. But I used to, when I'd go to raves, like, mix, like, typically ketamine, GHB, and cocaine. Sometimes MDMA instead of cocaine. Something I can't do now because of how fucked up my system is. Like it's interesting. Like GHB, like, will make you feel actually more refreshed the next day. Just for the love of God, don't drink alcohol with it. Like, I would use it as an alcohol substitute. Don't mix a downer with a downer. GHB is a heavy-duty downer. Like that's how you overdose. But ketamine, though, is not particularly our isomer ketamine. It feels like it has a sedating. Well, I mean, it's an anesthetic, so of course, yeah, it's gonna numb you out. And a lot of people refer to it as a downer, but it's a dissociative, and it doesn't have a high toxicity profile, so you can take it with a lot of different stuff that are downers, and the ketamine won't be the problem. GHB, on the other hand, you have to be super careful with. Like, do not take that shit with fucking Xanax or alcohol. Just going back to, like, why I find modafinil worth taking once a week. Hi there. I find that ever since this taper started, my sleep apnea has made a resurgence with a vengeance. Like I wake up multiple times a night, and because of withdrawal, I'm in a lot of pain, so my muscles feel super rigid, and I have to kind of get up and walk around a bit to stretch my muscles out. I'll usually go out for a smoke and then just go back to bed, and hope that I fall back asleep. It's gonna happen 2, 3, 4 times a night for me now. But sleep apnea has me waking up with, like, snot fucking filling my sinuses, and geysers of phlegm just fucking gushing out of my lungs. Just purge that shit in the morning. Like, it's awful. But modafinil actually, and this is indicated in a lot of people, that it helps tremendously with sleep apnea. And the only thing that I've found helps with sleep apnea otherwise, kind of, is nasal decongestants. But for one, that shit is so fucking acrid, it hurts to take a little drop up each nose. And I'm not talking about just standard saline solution. I'm talking about actual nasal decongestant. And I will use that stuff once in the blue moon, because if you use it, my dad uses it fucking every day, and I tell him, this is a bad idea. As soon as you stop, your whatever is being helped, not being able to breathe through your nose or whatever while you're sleeping, which is actually very crucial for getting a good sleep, believe it or not, that is going to come back on you fucking times 10 when you stop taking it. my dad's kind of stubborn, so he was just like, I'll just keep taking it, then I won't stop taking it. I'm like, okay, well, I hope your supply doesn't get cut off for whatever reason. But yeah, no, interestingly, modafinil, like it lasts quite a while, like it's like 12 to 15 hours. I find though, like most stimulants, and I almost struggle to call this a stimulant because I don't find it even like that much more stimulating than, like, for example, I just had a cup of coffee and I made a latte. I mixed this concoction I have that's cacao and lion's mane, cordyceps, and some other stuff, and it kind of tastes like hot chocolate. And I mix the powder in with the milk, steam it, and I make a latte with it. And yeah, it's just like just caffeine alone just does not do it for me. It'll just make me tired, if anything. Like as I said, ADD causes this antithetical response to stimulants. But with the addition of the cacao, it's like, okay, I get a little bit of a buzz. And I'd say that is probably about even more noticeable than the modafinil, in terms of just like that stimulant effect. Otherwise, modafinil gives you this interesting kind of flow state, sort of how do I put it? Mode to your perception, and your overall demeanor, ability to function. I'm using this word a lot, but it's because it's pretty crucial when talking about this stuff, whether it does or does not help with function, because that's the point. Like, I think modafinil should be prescribed to people with ADD, because it's not, like, the thing is, amphetamines, they may not be physically addictive, but they are psychologically addictive. And Ritalin is actually a very, very close cousin to cocaine. Oh, the crows didn't eat all the fucking bread yet. Huh, that's interesting. I know they'll polish it off soon enough, but yeah, no, methylphenidate, whatever it's called, it's in Concerta, Ritalin. Yeah, I've never been a fan of that stuff. I was prescribed it when I was a kid, and I actually would fake taking the pills. Like, I'd feign popping it, and kind of like in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the movie. Like, I'm reading the book right now. Trust me, the book is way better. It's like, the book is, it's surreal. It's like actually looking through the eyes of a schizophrenic for the entire narrative. That's something I think that just a movie wouldn't be capable of capturing. So, I think the movie otherwise did a good job, but how he hides the like pill under his tongue, and look, I took it, and then fucking spits it out. Like, that's basically what I would do, and then I'd flick him in the fucking corner of the office room where I would play computer games. And I rediscovered that stash like years later, when I was looking for fucking downers so I could sleep after like a crazy fucking 3-day New Year's binge on like multiple fucking drugs. I think I was like on like 7 drugs New Year's Eve. This was when I was like 17 or whatever. Oh, crows, you want some goodies? You want some goodies? Put a little buffet out for them. But yeah, no, I've been given Ritalin since then, and by people, and I just like, yeah, I don't know, I'm just not a huge fan of it. I'm also, maybe it's just the relation to the molecular relation to cocaine, but yeah, like, cocaine doesn't really do anything except make me want to do more, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. That's where the addictive qualities come in. That's where, it's psychologically capable of forming or inducing dependencies. Whereas physically, the only suffering you'll have if you stop is the crash, which is just like a hangover, rebound. And, rebound is something that's definitely very understated. I think, in part due to, doctors wanting people to take medications and stuff like that, like benzodiazepines. You don't have to be addicted to them to get rebound effects from stopping. Like if you take, say, clonazepam a couple days in a row, you've had no benzo tolerance beforehand in your entire life, and you stop, whatever the benzodiazepines were helping will come back on you even harder, and then it will make you want to take the benzos again to make it go away, and so you feel relaxed. And that's, kind of part and parcel why it's so atrocious and addictive and just this real silent killer of a drug. Luckily modafinil is not, as far as I can tell, physically addictive. I take it like once a week max, maybe like once every 2 weeks sometimes, because I'm not scripted it. I asked my doctor about it because I was like, hey, this actually helps with my sleep apnea. I'm like, I just don't think my doctor realizes how severe my sleep apnea was before, because I've made a video on this, you can look it up. It's called three deaths before 30, part 1, where sleep apnea almost killed me when I was 14, 15. I think it actually did kill me, but somehow I managed to come back. It's a pretty wild story. You can look it up. And it wasn't just like a sleep paralysis hallucination. I was actually my lips were completely blue, my face was gray once I got out of it. Scary stuff. And sleep apnea masks are they're kind of wishy-washy in that they're not entirely proven to help, and for someone who has to practice very, very strict sleep hygiene and has to sleep on their side lest they get sleep paralysis, I had sleep paralysis last night. I had it twice the night before. I had terrible sleep paralysis the night before, and to me it's it's much scarier than any fucking drug. Even fucking phosphorus, god damn it. I'd even go so far as to say it's scarier than 5-MeO-DMT. As you wake up, you can't move, your brain's going into fight or flight. I used to have hallucinations. In some cruel twist, sleep paralysis allows you to move one thing, your eyelids, so you can open your eyes, and that's typically where the hallucinations come in. The crows, they brought the food all the way over from there that I put over here. See, they're so smart. They're just like, I'm going to take it somewhere away from people, somewhere safe to eat. They're very smart fucking crows. I've got some pretty wild stories about them, but I'm going to try to stay on track with this narrative. Anyways, I had some fucking wild hallucinations from sleep paralysis as a teenager. But the thing is, when I get it now, it's just kind of like blackness, and I can't move. And I always get it coming out of sleep because and if people who are prone to it are 60% more likely to get sleep paralysis if they're on their back. For me, it's 90% more likely. I typically get it coming out of sleep. Some people get it going into sleep. I've gotten it going into sleep if I fall asleep on my back. And that is when the one part of the struggle that I really, really hate there's nothing I love about the sleep paralysis experience. Some people have said you can change it into like lucid dreaming and stuff, but I mean, I just always I haven't been able to fight that fight or flight response from the body, because it's obviously going to elicit that response when you wake up and your body's going, oh fuck, I can't move, I can't defend myself, and sort of the part of your brain that's producing dreams, REM cycles, is still going, so that's why people will have the hallucinations. And because of that fight or flight response, I think that infusion causes these very scary personifications. Like, I used to see the girl from fucking The Grudge or The Ring or whatever. I mean, they kind of look the same, honestly. At the edge of my bed going like, when I was a teenager. And I was just kind of like, after a while, like, oh, fuck off. This bitch again, fuck you. I mean, that's how normalized it became to me. But now it's like, I just wake up and I can't move. But yeah, just touching on that part, that's like just a really cruel aspect of it, other than being able to open your eyes, is that if you don't fight it, then you'll fall back, you'll fall in and out of sleep, but you'll still be like partially aware that your body can't move, and that's absolutely terrifying. I honestly, I think that I would impute that more than anything to, as a reason to why, like when I break through on DMT or whatever, and it's like really fucking just throttling me over the head with how crazy it is, like how far I am from my body. It doesn't bother me all that much because I am so used to that happening with sleep paralysis. But unlike sleep paralysis, fucking DMT is actually really, really interesting, and like, especially with Chandra, like the Chandra I made, like it's very loving, and it's very like compassionate, and like teach me lessons and showing me these like this vast array of beautiful fucking sights. Whereas like sleep paralysis is just like everything's black and I can't move, and I've got to do the whole Kill Bill thing of like wiggle your big toe, struggle so you don't fall in and out of sleep. It's like there have been times where I've given into it, because I just like felt like I was exerting all my energy to get myself moving, and I just couldn't do it. And the thing is, time distortion is like it's almost more insane than any drug on when you have sleep paralysis, because it allegedly only lasts 60 seconds maximum, but it feels like fucking eternities. But I've had instances where I feel too exhausted from trying to fight against, what feels like this giant lead blanket sort of weighing me down. But what would happen when I would lapse back into dream states is I would lose my lucidity, and I would have these sort of false awakenings, where I would sort of dream of myself getting up and moving around, like, oh fuck, I'm finally free from the sleep paralysis. But then I'd realize that my body's starting to feel sort of numb, and all my limbs are kind of like, like my hands, my arms are starting to flop around. Why is that? What's going on? And then my knees will buckle, and boom, I'm like back into being paralyzed, and I'm like, oh fuck, that was a dream. That was a false awakening. I'm sure a lot of you guys have had false awakenings, where you in essence will be under the impression that you've woken up and, some people, like I've had this happen before, back when I had better dream recall because I wasn't ingesting fucking stupid amounts of THC on a daily basis. I would have dreams of going through, especially if I had a stressful day ahead of me, of going through that day, completing it, and then waking up just to like waking up for real, just to be like, fuck, that was a dream. Now I gotta do it again. Damn it. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, and this is indicative of what I say about, why I think people give way, like they really give an underwhelming amount of credit to the power of the psyche and the brain, because if you've ever had lucid dreams, and there are different tiers of lucid dreams, and it's based on the amount of lucidity, i.e. how aware you are of the fact that you're dreaming. Because I've had lucid dreams where it's almost like I'm intoxicated or anesthetized, and I'm like, oh hey, I'm in a dream, this is really cool, but I'm not really fully aware of it. But I've had, I think, 2 lucid dreams in my entire life. This is when I was really trying to achieve lucid dreaming, where I became super duper aware to the point where it was not quite on par with the acuity of day-to-day life, but pretty damn close. And it was very interesting because every time that would happen, it would be someone in my dream. Usually, back then, it was someone I knew. Once it was a friend at the time who, I was going through the hallways of my high school that was, concurrent to that point in my life. And my friend sees me and he's like, hey dude, we're dreaming. Go look at your hands. Go look in the mirror. Do some reality check. And I remember looking in the mirror and it was I had 3 fucking heads that looks like some radioactive monster from Fallout or something. Because your brain is just not capable of producing, your own image when it's not actually there. Or your own hands. It looked like my hands were melting away. And naturally being 12 and oh yeah, we're lucid dreaming, fuck yeah, we can do whatever we want, let's fly. I remember flying, and we went over interestingly over North Van here, where I used to live, way over there in East Van, which is that is the most one of the most fucking drug-addled places ever. And unfortunately I fell victim to that for a long time, and I'm so glad I do not live there anymore. But yeah, anyways, so I essentially was flying over, there's a mall over that way, and I was flying over the parkade, and I saw this big fucking gorilla beating the shit out of this sexy lady. Or it wasn't beating the shit out of her, it was terrorizing her. She was in her car, and it was arr, arr, arr. And so I kind of fly down like Superman, I'm saving this pretty lady. And so, I can't quite remember what I did to the gorilla, but somehow I defeated it. And since it was a lucid dream, I was like, let's fuck the lady, and she was like, yo, okay. And yeah, I won't get into any more detail than that. But other lucid dreams I had, very much devoid of that acuity, in that yeah, it's oh, I'm in a dream, isn't that cool? This sort of this somnolent awareness, like I was heavily sedated but aware of it. And I've had similar things happen when I've come out of like surgery and stuff like that. Like I call them trauma dreams, where like essentially if I just had experienced something terrible, like I'm in a great deal of pain or whatever, I'm in the hospital, you know, I'd rather be anywhere else in the world, and my subconscious, you know, if you are someone who subscribes to that notion, I think it's, you know, a pretty valid notion, but, you know, I could also be wrong, so it's hard to say. Yeah, if you subscribe to that notion, it was like the subconscious was like putting up this protective installation for me, by like thrusting me into these dream states where I would have these like beautiful, vivid, like overarching narrative-driven dreams, like full-on stories being told, and like, you know, it's the kind of dreams where you wake up and you're just like, fuck, I want to go back to sleep and go back to that dream, please. But, you know, I'd wake up and I'd be like in frightful fucking pain and shit. You know, I wouldn't say that's the same as lucidity though. It's similar to like very low tiers of lucidity during dreaming. Like when I've had that low level of lucidity, like usually what will happen is I'll like look at my hands or something, and then my hands will start melting away. I'll be like, oh, I'm dreaming. And so I'll be like, I'm gonna try to fly, and then I'll try to fly and I'll just jump up really high and then kind of get pushed back down, and I'll try again, and it's just like I'll jump a little less high and then get pushed down again and again and again. But yeah, you know, I remember having a trauma dream coming out of a cystoscopy, and that is when they shove a camera in your pee hole. Because I've had cystitis. That's one of my conditions, is cystitis of the bladder, which, you know, probably makes some of you who know anything about ketamine go, why the hell are you doing it? Well, because I take care of myself and I take measures to flush my bladder out, and it's actually not something that worsens my cystitis, unless I do a lot of it and, you know, neglect to engage in like basic hygiene. But yeah, like the trauma dream I had coming out of the cystoscopy, where they gave me, I think, fentanyl, propofol, and this was when I've seen a private clinic that was prescribing ketamine. The chief practitioner there, who is like a very well-renowned anesthesiologist, she got them to give me an IV dose of ketamine while I was going under, and I remember everything going and that was gone. I was out. I wish they did that during my colonoscopy, because they gave me fentanyl and propofol during my colonoscopy, but since I was on Valium, and that was prescribed, by the way, and methadone, which was prescribed, it combated both of those drugs, because I had a tolerance, and since both those drugs are related, fentanyl does, essentially, it's a very strong agonist, so it'll try to kick off any other opioids from your receptors, but like evidently they didn't use enough to bypass methadone, because methadone essentially like it walls off your pain receptors. So when you use, you know, what it was intended for, which was heroin, the heroin particles just can't get to your pain receptors, so it's kind of pointless. Now, I don't think it because as I said, fentanyl is so competitive for your receptors that it'll kick everything off. But people who use fentanyl typically use it in very, very high doses when they're abusing it. The times I abused it were mostly when I was in precipitated withdrawal from Suboxone, and I was so desperate that I knew this was the only thing that would cut through it, and so I did that, but then ended up causing more complications as a result. So yeah, just bad news bears. Don't, if you're under precipitated withdrawal, your best bet is just fucking, if you have a benzo around, take it and ride it out. It's going to be awful. It's going to be the most painful thing you've experienced, but ride it out and maybe consider not being on an opioid maintenance drug like Suboxone that can cause such horrific, like traumatizing withdrawal, precipitated withdrawal effects. Like, no joke, like you can now ask a pharmacist, is precipitated withdrawal, like, considered by scientists the most painful thing a human being can experience? And the like myriad of pharmacists I've asked, doctors I've asked this question to, posed this question to, they've confirmed that. Like, yes, 1,000 times yes, it's fucking awful. The thing is, it won't physically kill you, unlike benzo withdrawal or anything. It just, it's interesting, but it's also scary because it's like, benzos don't get you anywhere near as high as, like, say, taking an opiate, opioids now. Like, the only opiate that you can get these days is, like, codeine, or, like, maybe opium. I smoked opium once, and it did fuck all. And I didn't even have an opiate tolerance then. But like an opiate, the distinction between the two, opioid means synthetic. So like dilaudid hydromorphone, for example, that is the synthetic equivalent to morphine, but it's much more potent than morphine. It's about, I think, 10 times a little stronger, 15 times as strong as morphine. And like synthetics are actually, for the most part, a good thing, because it means, we don't have to mine limited resources for something. Like, oftentimes if you're, like, for example, making something in a clandestine lab, like MDMA, like, you'll need some sort of precursor like sassafras, which is actually I believe it's a sap from trees, and it's caused like devastation to, I believe it's Indonesian forests that have the sassafras trees. So I think they've stopped using sassafras in MDMA, or to make MDMA, to synthesize it, a long time ago. Because synthesized products are, yes, they're artificially created, but it's not like, you just create it out of nothing. It's like Albert Einstein says, matter cannot be created or destroyed. But there are bad synthetic products, like there are, plastics and stuff like that just won't biodegrade, and that will last a very long time. And yeah, sure, it'll extend the shelf life of a product, which allows companies to make more money, but it just wreaks havoc on the environment. But like, going back to the opioid comparison, opiates are essentially codeine, morphine, and heroin's considered an opiate because it is converted, or morphine is converted into heroin. without the process of like technical synthesis being used. But opioids are like fentanyl, like they're, you need a lab to create them. And it's kind of fucking crazy. Like in my city, it's well known that most of the fentanyl out there is not fentanyl. They're fentanyl analogs because, Prime Minister Xi fucking, totally not a dictator. He said to Trump when he was in office, he's like, yeah, I pinky swear, no more fentanyl going into your country. And the fentanyl epidemic, pandemic, I'd say, because it, affects more than just my city, more than just my country, An epidemic is just, a fairly localized issue, whereas a pandemic is, like more of like a global issue. I just want to make that distinction, especially just, because sometimes people tend to be nitpicky, and be like, you don't know what you're talking about, and I'm just trying to be like, I admittedly, I don't fully know what I'm talking about all the time, but, I have a pretty good idea about this stuff because I've lived it, and, even at my worst, I was still like, researching, getting shit tested, wanting to know what I was putting in my body and so forth. It was the eradication of heroin because no one wanted it anymore because fentanyl was so much stronger that partially made me stop doing it. And now I'll go through areas that used to because people are this is how bad it is in my city. Like, they put up UV lights at intersections so people won't be using the light from the street lamps at night to shoot up, because the UV makes it so you can't see your veins. That's at least what my buddy told me, and that sounds about right, because they have that in certain bathrooms, typically in gas stations, places where addicts are. Places where I went as an addict to shoot up back in the day, which, by the way, if you are a hardcore IV drug user, locking yourself in a bathroom is a really fucking bad idea. Because if you overdose, how is anyone going to get to you? So, yeah, don't do that. Just please don't. But, I've gone on for a while here. Anyways, this video is mostly just supposed to be fucking just a reason for me to get outside, feed the crows, talk about, stay active. Being active, it's a good thing, You should have a good diet, you should have a good exercise regimen. I implore pretty much everyone to read, to meditate, to give themselves silence, to put their phone on silent after 6 or 9, which I usually do, which I haven't been doing as much as I used to and as much as I really should. But I think reading for me, I always loved fiction, novels, more than just about any other form of storytelling. Actually, film is probably my favorite, just because it's most palatable with my my learning style, which is visual learning. But oddly enough, with visual learning, it makes retention of information when you're reading text very difficult, which is odd, right? It's kind of odd, eh? Jesus, sounded very Canadian there. Kind of odd, eh? Eh, buddy? You'd be surprised how little Canadians say eh, and how little we have the Canadian accents, at least where I live, and how rare it is to hear people apologize, the like Canadian stereotypes, at least where I live, are like, pretty much non-existent in terms of the stereotypes actually playing out. There are places where they do, that I've been, which are more rural, but not here. Not here. This is a port city, we're right next to Seattle, so, and also the internet, right? The internet, I think, is largely responsible for people kind of losing their accents and really changing their jargon or their verbiage, particularly jargon. So what I'm getting at is lexicon, language, verbiage, words we use in day-to-day life, jargon, the terms we use that are more casual and not like definitive words. There are words that kind of sprouted up as like slang to use amongst various exclusive groups. Well, because of the proliferation of information with the internet, jargon is now like it's pretty widely used and understood, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, the internet is really quite something. I could definitely see why Terence McKenna and Timothy Leary were like, the internet is going to be the next step in, like consciousness expansion. Because, like, honestly, with all that information at your fingertips, you really could teach yourself. You really could use it to empower your ability to learn and understand, and, essentially you can become smarter as a result. But typically that doesn't happen because, there's a lot of misinformation out there, probably more misinformation than like factual information, and just stuff that's not objectively true is so prevalent. And also there's just so much access to just mindless entertainment that people tend to embrace that more than the challenges that are out there. How often are people taking like the Mendra test for fun or whatever? I've done that once, and it was like I didn't finish all the questions, and it was like, your intelligence is outside of our range of isn't quantifiable by our standards or something like that. It's outside of the range of our standards. I don't know if they're just saying that to be nice, probably, but who knows? Maybe I am some sort of like Dostoevsky the Idiot style fucking autistic prodigy, like super genius, but I just haven't. If that is the case, I haven't found the genius part yet. Have I found the near autistic part? Yeah, I'm sure that's pretty evident to most people. Because again, I'm not like clinically autistic, but the way I see it is that ADD, autism, Asperger's are all on one big spectrum. This is not, just for the record, this is my opinion. This is certainly not what the DSM says. DSM is very important. It's, I think, if you have any mental health issues, B, you actually care about mental health issues and want to learn about them, you should read every year's edition of the DSM, because those are the guidelines for what constitutes various disorders. And one terrible consequence of the internet is people self-diagnose themselves a lot. And I get why, because when you're suffering and confused by symptoms you don't quite understand, you can't put a name to, naturally you're going to want some degree of clarification. I get that, I get it. It's understandable. But I've gone through this process myself. You are only harming yourself at the end of the day. So you really should, I would say, be even leery of diagnoses that like shrinks will give you, like a psychiatrist or something, because typically they will give you a diagnosis and they will medicate you before they can confirm that diagnosis. I have a term for this, pills first, questions later. So, it's important to do your own research, but don't get too fucking wrapped up in, trying to place meaning where there isn't any, just because there are some parallels. I think it's insanely destructive and disheartening. I've been through this myself. So as I said, I've been misdiagnosed with a lot of things, bipolar, schizophrenia, neither of which I have, for certain, not even bipolar 2, where there's no psychosis. I definitely have treatment-resistant major depressive disorder, but I've heard some people get delusions from that. I've never had a psychotic episode, except for the one time I was shooting cocaine for days, but that will do that to anyone. Doesn't matter how fucking mentally stable you are. Overuse of stimulants will cause excited delirium, and that's exactly what happened. And it lasted a couple hours, and that couple hours was enough to warrant taking years out of my life, very crucial years in my late teens of neurological development and just personal maturation robbed from me, because they saw the effects of the stimulant psychosis when I went in after it happened, and were like, he's got bipolar or schizophrenia, we gotta lock him up until we figure this out. And guess what? They never really put any effort into figuring it out. So I had to fucking do all the work for them to show them that it wasn't the case. So the system's very broken, and going back to modafinil, that's one example of why medications, just like modafinil, I think would have immensely positive results in those who have ADD, and less addictive, less side effects, less amped up fucking amphetamine jitters, even though, as I said, ADD does tend to have an antithetical effect of these drugs, but or cause these drugs to have an antithetical effect and sedate you, but that doesn't happen in everyone. You have to have, like me, pretty severe ADD for that to be the case. But yeah, anyways, on that note, I'll wrap it up. I think I've covered quite a bit here, so yeah, I'll give you something to chew on, and let's discuss, because I am, pardon my fucking French, but I am fucking starving for a good, meaningful discussion. And this may sound kind of hypocritical or whatever, considering everything I just went over, but that's not related to fucking drugs. My personality consists of more than just drug use. I'm happy to give people advice. I'm happy to talk about it every now and then, but drugs this is how I put it, and this may sound cheesy, straight out of fucking AA or an AA playbook or whatever, but drugs without life is addiction. To me, that is the definition of addiction. So drugs to enhance life and activities in life, that is a different story. And on that note, I'm going to go engage in some more life. I'm going to play some guitar, and then I'm going to go for a walk and find the res and go buy some native smokes, because I'm fucking broke. I'm a mustache. I was able to smile. Anyways, catch you later. Stay sexy.